Kelly observed her reflection in the office bathroom mirror, noticing the small lines forming around her eyes. 40 years. There was something about that number that made her reflect on the path she had taken so far, especially when compared to the women around her. The previous week, her younger sister Meredith had sent photos from her nephew's first birthday. In the images, Meredith smiled alongside her husband, forming the perfect portrait of a happy family. The same story repeated with her cousin Fran and her best friend Patricia, both married with children and an apparently complete life. Kelly sighed and adjusted a strand of hair that insisted on falling over her forehead. It wasn't that she wasn't accomplished. As a financial manager at one of the city's leading companies, she had built a respectable career. Her rented apartment in the city's most charming neighborhood was decorated exactly as she had always dreamed, with hanging plants in the windows and a small collection of old books on the dark wooden shelves. On Fridays, she would usually host friends for board game nights and glasses of wine, sharing stories of the week. But on that Monday morning, something different was in the air when Kelly entered the meeting room. "Team, this is Jason, our new junior financial analyst," announced Mark, the department director. "Kelly, as the area manager, I hope you can help him settle in." Kelly nodded and extended her hand to the young man, immediately noticing his easy smile and brown eyes that seemed to hold some kind of mischief. Jason must have been in his early 30s, she estimated, as he shook her hand firmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Kelly. I've heard great things about your work here," said Jason, with a voice that carried an almost exaggerated confidence. In the following weeks, Jason proved to be a pleasant colleague, always stopping by Kelly's desk to ask for advice or simply chat. He had a contagious laugh and a peculiar way of seeing the world, as if everything was simpler than it really was. "Were you always this serious?" he asked one afternoon while Kelly was reviewing a complex spreadsheet. "What do you mean?" "You frown when you're focused. It looks like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." Kelly didn't know how to respond. No one had noticed this detail before, or at least, no one had mentioned it. It was small moments like this that brought the two closer together. A coffee after work, a ride on a rainy day, messages exchanged over the weekends. Before Kelly realized it, she was involved with Jason in a way she hadn't planned. "I'm dating," she confided to her friend Patricia during lunch. "He's younger, works with me, but I'm not his direct boss," she hastened to clarify. Patricia smiled with genuine happiness. Finally, someone managed to break down Kelly's fortress walls. "What's he like?" Kelly hesitated. "Different from what I imagined, you know. He's not exactly the gentleman of my dreams, but there's something about him that makes me smile." What Kelly didn't reveal to her friend was the little voice inside her that whispered suspiciously, "Are you in love with him? Or with the idea of finally having someone?" 3 months into the relationship, Kelly met Eleanor, Jason's mother. The meeting took place in the small apartment where Jason and his mother lived, decorated with antique furniture and an excess of knickknacks. "So you're the woman dating my son?" Eleanor examined her from head to toe, not disguising the critical look. "How old are you again, dear?" 40, replied Kelly, maintaining her composure. I think you're too old for my son," said Eleanor, serving tea in mismatched cups. "Jason has always been a youthful spirit. He needs someone who can match his energy." Kelly felt her face burn, but she smiled politely. Jason, sitting next to his mother, just shrugged as if he was used to the lack of discretion disguised as sincerity. On the way back home, Kelly tried to broach the subject. "Your mother didn't really like me, did she?" Jason sighed. "That's just how she is. Overly protective. Since my father left us when I was 12, she took on all the responsibilities. I guess she never fully got over it." That revelation softened Kelly's heart. Maybe she was just an insecure mother trying to protect her son. She decided to give Eleanor more time to get to know her better. It was the following week that Jason surprised Kelly with an unexpected proposal. "What if I moved into your apartment? It would be a way for us to spend more time together, and I think it's time for me to follow my path. Kelly frowned. But don't you think it's too soon? Maybe it is, but there's one more detail. My mum is thinking of moving closer to my aunt, so it would be temporary until I find a place of my own. Even though she felt it was too early, Kelly ended up giving in. After all, she wasn't getting any younger, and the idea of having company at home was tempting. Maybe it was time to take a step forward in her life. In the first weeks of living together, the small things started to annoy. The wet towel on the bed, the dirty dishes in the sink, the remote control that always disappeared. Jason had an impressive ability to turn order into chaos in a matter of minutes. "Jason, could you please put the dishes in the dishwasher after using them?" Kelly asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "Relax, Kelly. You're too methodical," he replied, without taking his eyes off the phone. "Life doesn't need to be so organized all the time." Kelly took a deep breath. Maybe he was right. Maybe she needed to relax a bit. But as the days went by, the frustration grew. Jason never did the shopping, didn't contribute to household chores, and when Kelly suggested a division of responsibilities, he always had a ready excuse. Game nights with friends, which used to be a highlight of Kelly's week, had become rare. Jason always complained about the noise, or simply locked himself in the bedroom when there were visitors. "You've changed since you started dating," commented Patricia during a rare lunch with friends. "We don't see each other like we used to." "I'm just adapting to life as a couple," Kelly justified, although a part of her knew there was something more. A small daily concession she didn't want to admit. It was on an ordinary night, while they were watching a movie, that Jason made the request that would change everything. "Kelly, let's get married." There were no flowers, no ring, not even a look in the eyes. Jason kept staring at the television as he proposed, as if he were commenting on the weather. "What?" Kelly needed a moment to process what she had heard. "Marriage, you and me. It makes sense, doesn't it? We already live together. We're doing well. It would be official." The next day, Jason gave her a small box containing a simple ring, which she would later discover was just costume jewelry. Kelly accepted it, with a mix of emotions she couldn't completely decipher. Perhaps it was happiness, or maybe it was the resignation of someone who believes that having something imperfect is better than having nothing at all. Jason's dismissal came like a cold shower a month later. He came home furious, threw his backpack on the sofa and announced, "That idiot Richard fired me. You need to talk to him, Kelly. He'll listen to you." Kelly felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Richard was a manager in another department, and although they had been colleagues for years, intervening in his decision would be inappropriate. Nevertheless, the next day, she sought him out during the lunch break. "Kelly, I admire and respect you, and I know you're Jason's fiancée, but I can't grant your request," said Richard, with a genuinely embarrassed expression. "He is a terrible professional. Arrives late, doesn't meet deadlines, treats colleagues arrogantly. I tried to give him chances, but it didn't work." Richard's words echoed in Kelly's mind throughout the day. They were all too familiar, echoing her own frustrations at home. The following weeks were tense. Jason began spending more time at home, but instead of helping, he seemed to create more work. Kelly would come home from the office to find the house messy, and still had to prepare dinner while he watched TV shows. It was on a Friday late afternoon that the phone call came, bringing news that would change the course of everything. Kelly's grandfather, Mr. August, had passed away suddenly. For Kelly, the pain was immediate and deep. Her grandfather had been a constant presence in her life, especially after her father's death when she was 22. "I need to travel for the funeral," she informed Jason, wiping away tears while packing a small suitcase. "Will you come with me?" Jason scratched his head, looking away. "Kelly, I'd love to, but I have a job interview scheduled for Monday. I can't miss this opportunity." Kelly nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment. This was one of the moments when she most needed support, but she decided not to insist. The journey to the small town in the countryside where her grandfather lived was lonely and contemplative. With each mile, memories came like waves. Her grandfather teaching her to ride a bike, telling bedtime stories, holding her hand at her father's funeral. "Never settle for less than you deserve, Kelly. You are special," he used to say, with that look that made Kelly truly believe in the words. During the funeral, surrounded by distant relatives and her grandfather's friends, Kelly felt an unusual clarity, as if, amidst the pain of loss, something was being born, a deeper understanding of herself and the path she had chosen. 3 days later, physically and emotionally exhausted, Kelly finally returned home. All she wanted was a hot bath and her bed. However, upon opening the apartment door, she was greeted by a sight that momentarily left her stunned. Eleanor, sitting comfortably on the couch, as if it was her rightful place. "Oh, you're back," said the older woman with a smile that was evidently fake. "Jason is in the bath." Kelly looked around, noticing the small changes: a different vase on the table, an unfamiliar blanket on the sofa. The television turned onto a channel she never watched. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" Kelly asked, trying to stay calm. "Didn't Jason tell you? I had to leave my apartment. The landlord sold the property. I'll be staying with you for a while." At that moment, Jason came out of the bathroom, his wet hair dripping onto his t-shirt. Kelly stared at him, expecting an explanation. "Kelly, my mother needed a place to stay," he said, avoiding her gaze. "It was all very sudden. I tried to call you, but you were busy with the funeral." Kelly took a deep breath, leaving the suitcase on the floor. "It's okay. Let's talk about it tomorrow. I'm exhausted right now." She headed to the bedroom, longing for the familiar comfort of her bed. However, upon opening the door, she was met with another shock. The room had been completely rearranged. Eleanor's clothes occupied part of the wardrobe, and on the dresser were arranged her creams and perfumes. "I put my mother in the master bedroom," Jason explained, appearing behind her. "You know she has back pain and needs a comfortable bed. Besides, she gets up many times to use the bathroom, so it's better for her to have the room with the ensuite." Kelly felt a wave of indignation rise in her chest, but she was too tired to argue. Without saying a word, she headed to the guest room, where a smaller and less comfortable bed awaited her. During the night, with Jason taking up more space than he should have, Kelly ended up moving to the sofa, where she finally managed to get a few hours of restless sleep. The next morning, before leaving for work, Kelly confronted Jason in the kitchen. "Jason, this is intolerable. When I get back, I expect your mother to be gone. I don't want her living with us. It just can't work." Jason opened his mouth to respond, but Kelly was already leaving, the door closing with more force than necessary behind her. The day at work was a blur of meetings and numbers that Kelly could hardly process, her mind constantly drifting back to the situation at home. When she finally returned to the apartment, she found Eleanor waiting for her, seated at the kitchen table like a queen on her throne. "Kelly, I know you don't want me here," began Eleanor with a falsely sweet tone. "But this house is also my son's, and I'm not leaving. I advise you to adapt to the situation. Now I'm the one in charge around here." For a moment, Kelly felt a blind fury take over her. But then, like a flash, her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. "Never settle for less than you deserve." Looking at Eleanor and then at Jason, who was observing the scene with an expression that showed he didn't know which side to take, Kelly understood a fundamental truth. She didn't need to live that way, as if she depended on Jason and his supposed love. In certain situations, it is better to be alone than in a relationship where there is no reciprocity. Kelly didn't confront either Jason or Eleanor. She simply nodded and retreated to the guest room. The following week, in secret, she organized herself. She visited several apartments until she found a small but charming one, 10 minutes from her work. She signed the lease contract that same afternoon. On a Friday, Kelly came home with an envelope in her hand. "Jason, "I won a special day at an inn in the mountains," she announced, holding up 2 coupons. "Unfortunately, I can't go because of work. I thought you and your mother might enjoy it. It's just for this Saturday." Jason looked suspiciously at the coupons, but the idea of a free day of luxury was too tempting to refuse. On Saturday morning, he and Eleanor excitedly set off for their spa day. As soon as their car turned the corner, Kelly picked up the phone. "You can come now." Within hours, a moving team emptied the apartment, taking all of Kelly's belongings to her new home. The beige sofa she loved so much, the books carefully stacked in boxes, the plants she tended with care. Everything was transferred efficiently. After finishing supervising the move, Kelly took one last look at the apartment that had been her refuge for so long. On the kitchen table, she left an envelope containing the key and a note. "Jason, our relationship has no future. The apartment rent is paid until the end of the month, after which it is no longer my responsibility. I wish the best for you and your mother. Kelly." Upon closing the door for the last time, Kelly felt an unexpected lightness. It was as if she were finally honoring her grandfather's words. She was choosing once again to be alone, but was also choosing to have peace. In her new apartment, smaller but infinitely more her own, Kelly unpacked her things carefully, placing each object exactly where she wanted. When she finished, she poured herself a glass of wine and opened the door to the small balcony, letting the evening breeze caress her face. Kelly never heard from Jason or his mother again, and that was perfectly fine. They had been chapters in her story, but they would not define her ending. In the months that followed, she began hosting friends for game nights again, resumed old hobbies, and even started a photography course she had always wanted to take. The most valuable lesson she would carry with her, however, was the one her grandfather had tried to teach her all her life: never to settle for a situation out of fear of not getting something better, because, as she finally understood, true courage is not in enduring the unbearable, but in recognizing when it's time to move on. And Kelly was just getting started. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.